Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about smurfing, and I'm going to lend a bit of an olive branch to some of the low elo viewers, despite my mentality about the game. I have to give the disclaimer before we get into this that you should not use this as an excuse for why you can't climb. Players of all ranks come in on new accounts, which is literally what we're talking about with smurfing, and are able to climb back to their main rank on a new account, basically with no problem. So if they can do that, then you can improve the way that you're playing to play like a platinum player, to play like a diamond player, to play like a master player, whatever it is, so that you can do the same thing and get out of your rank. So Smurfs are not preventing you from climbing. However, they do make some games feel unbalanced and unfair. And I think the reason why this perception is so strong is because it has actually gotten worse over the last year, and I want to talk about that. So I did a little bit of research, and mostly what I wanted to see is I was curious if we could get a percentage on Smurf accounts. Like, what percentage of accounts in low elo are actually Smurf accounts? It'd be interesting to see. Or more importantly, what number of games being played in low elo have a Smurf account in them or something like that. But, and this is kind of an issue, Riot doesn't really have any publicly released data on that kind of thing. So there's no way for me to definitively say that, oh yeah, well, Smurfs only comprise, 3% or 5% of low elo games. So it's a smaller problem than you guys think that it is. So we have a difference of opinion based on kind of lived experience. And my opinion is that you shouldn't blame smurfing for why you can't climb, and so you should assume it's a low amount. The opinion of low elo players is objectively from having played in low elo and seen the 20-0 Katarina with the 70% win rate. The opinion of a lot of low elo players is that objectively there are too many smurfs in their games, and it's kind of creating an imbalance, and it feels, whether it's true or not, or whether it's a good mentality to have or not, it feels like it's difficult to climb when you don't know whether you're facing a smurf all the time. Now, why do I think that it's gotten worse? So number one, we can't really prove who's right or wrong here because we don't have appropriate stats. Someone could, in theory, maybe I'll do it at some point. Someone could pull 100 accounts, off the rank ladder in gold or silver, and we could just kind of go through and get a rough idea of how big the problem is by identifying how many of those accounts are Smurfs. But, it would take some work in order to do something like that. That being said, I do think it's gotten worse over the last couple of years, and to understand why, we have to go back and look at different iterations of how smurfing has worked in League over the last couple of years and talk about why it's particularly bad right now. So there's kind of three periods that we want to look at over the last couple of years, and I don't have exact dates or whatever, but we have a period, number one, before normal game MMR affected ranked placement. Then we have this period of time up until about last year where normal MMR affected ranked placement and Smurfs Queue existed. And then we have this period of time now over the last year and a half where normal game MMR affects ranked placement and there's no such thing as Smurfs Queue. And let's talk about what those things mean and why it's kind of a problem for low elo players right now. So number one, what you have to understand, and this, again, don't use this as an excuse, but this is true. Oftentimes you'll hear people say, if you don't AFK, there's only 4 people on your team who can AFK and 5 people on the enemy team who could potentially AFK. So you shouldn't complain about AFKing because if you never AFK, you're actually likely to climb a little bit because you're never AFKing. Smurfing is the opposite problem. Unfortunately, the math is, when it comes to smurfing, that there are 5 players on the enemy team who could potentially be smurfing, and only 4 players on your team who could be smurfing if you're not a smurf and you're legitimately a low elo player. And so unfortunately, the reality is that when smurfing exists in low elo, the result will be that actual low elo players are likely to win less than 50% of their games when they're having to go against Smurfs, because the chance that a Smurf is on the other team is greater than the chance that a Smurf's on their team. That's just the way that it is. So we have to look at these 3 time periods. I think that the last 2 were kind of okay. The idea was originally that all accounts, no matter how they performed in normal games, started at 1200 MMR, which was about Silver 4 face rank. And depending on how you did in your placements, you would place basically anywhere from like Bronze 4 to Silver 1. And so you'd start in Silver 4 MMR, and depending on how you do in your placements, you get like anywhere from Bronze 4 to Silver 1. Iron wasn't in the game. Emerald wasn't in the game. Riot decided that smurfing was a problem, and in order to combat it, they wanted normal game MMR to impact your ranked placement, so that rather than placing a lot of smurf accounts into Silver 4, 3, 2, and 1, where they had to play a lot of games in order to get out, they decided that it would be better to use normal MMR to detect basically people who were like doing really well in normal games and could basically win more games than ranked at a certain rank. And what they would do with that is the algorithm, or the matchmaking system, would use that MMR from your normal games and average it with what the starting MMR should have been for a new account. And you'd get an account that instead of starting at 1200 MMR, because of high normal game MMR, could start at 1500 MMR or 1600 MMR. And as a result, those accounts could both place higher, more into like gold or something like that, rather than placing in silver. And they also had to spend less ranked games in order to get back to their main rank, or to the rank that they basically would plateau in. And so that seems like a good thing as far as low elo players are concerned, because it meant that Smurfs were playing less games in low elo. However, it didn't really have much of a noticeable impact for them over the last 4 or 5 years, and I think the reason why is because Smurf Queue existed. And the way Smurfs Queue works is if a player has MMR that's significantly higher than the rank that they're at, if they're winning a huge percentage of their games and kind of snowballing through ranked, then the matchmaking would basically accelerate this person into a queue where they're only playing, for the most part, versus other people that it thinks are also smurfing. And it would use those matches, and who wins and who loses those matches, to assign or take away more or less MMR in order to both sort out who the best of the best Smurfs are, who are probably like high elo players that should be going to Masters, to GM, to Challenger, and to sort out the players who are kind of middle of the pack in Smurf Queue, who should be going to Diamond and Plat, and the players at the bottom of the pack who may not have actually been smurfing at all, but who may have been successfully climbing in the rank that they were at. And so while this wasn't perfect, because Smurfs would still spend some games, not in Smurfs Queue yet, playing in silver and gold, particularly in their first placement games, and some players who were in silver and gold, or low elo players, would get propelled into Smurfs Queue and then feel like they had this really hard game that they couldn't win particularly after they just won like 3 games in a row, or they went on a 10-game winning streak, and now they get this game where like everyone's way too good and it's really hard, and then they lose. But then after losing that one, or maybe after losing a couple, they'll drop out of Smurfs Queue and they can go back to kind of regularly climbing at their MMR with normal players of that rank. So it wasn't perfect, but it kept most of the Smurf games isolated to playing versus each other. Here's where the issue came in. Riot decided for some reason about 1.5 years ago to get rid of Smurfs Queue. I don't know why. Maybe they were worried people were able to abuse Smurf Queue to try to get to a slightly higher rank, but for whatever reason they got rid of Smurf Queue. When they got rid of Smurf Queue, which wasn't something I was really aware of until actually somebody had commented something about them getting rid of Smurfs Queue, which I hadn't heard of before, a while ago. And I was like not sure whether it was true or not. I'm not a player who spends, as I've said, a ton of time playing on Smurfs. I've been playing on this main account the entire time. I've never had an account. Well, okay. I've never had my main account banned. That was a whole different story though. That was not. I didn't get an account banned because I was being toxic smurfing in low elo. I got an account banned. Oh, okay. One, I bought a Smurf account. This was the one time I actually bought a Smurf account, and I got it to Diamond, and then it got banned. And it got banned because the people who leveled the Smurf account used bots to level the Smurf account, and then it got banned. So, by the way, if you're going to buy a Smurf account, don't bother buying a Smurf account. I would just hand level it yourself. You buy a Smurf account, it just gets banned. So I had bought one Smurf account, got it to Diamond, then it got banned. It wasn't because I was being toxic. But anyway, so other than that, I've never been banned, and so I've just been playing on my main account the entire time. I have Smurf accounts, of course, mostly to play other roles where I'm like legitimately stuck at the rank that I'm at on those other roles, and for the most part, not playing that much because I'm mostly playing on my main. But so I don't do a ton of smurfing. So where were we? That being said, I have no idea where we were. So we were talking about Smurfs Queue. Oh, Smurfs Queue went away. So from my perspective, from what I had known, Smurfs Queue was the way that it worked. And then about a year and a half ago, it went away. I'm not really aware that it went away because I haven't been smurfing a whole lot the last year and a half. The result of Smurfs Queue going away has been, I think, disastrous for low elo, and I think it's why there's such a big perception from a lot of low elo players we're seeing talk on these videos. Their perception is that smurfing is becoming a really big problem, and it's particularly gotten bad recently, and I think that they're right, and I think that it's because they took Smurf Queue away. And so now, instead of 90% of those games being played by Smurfs taking place against other Smurfs, those games are just happening regularly in silver, in gold, and in plat or wherever. And that's kind of an issue because there's a big difference, especially because we don't know what percentage of games are containing a Smurf because there's no data on it that Riot's released, and it's kind of hard to quantify. It's, I can do a pretty good job if I were to go through 100 accounts, like I said, of identifying whether an account's a Smurf or not. But, it's a little bit more complicated to get a really good answer on what percentage of games or people are smurfing in. But the result is essentially we don't know how many people are smurfing, but we know that we've gone from like 90% of Smurf games being versus each other and not including very many actual low elo players, and now they're just all out in the open in these low elo games. And so that's got to be a massive change that would definitely create a perception of there being a gigantic problem, because there essentially is a gigantic problem. What Riot wanted to do, and what they've said they're doing, is they want the LP gains to be so high and the rank placement to be so high that people are able to get to whatever rank they would normally get to as quickly as possible. And so what they're saying is that if we have a diamond player smurfing in gold, what we want to happen is that player to immediately place into like plat 4 or plat 3 or as high as we can comfortably, place them, and then win 40, 50 LP a game until they hit their main rank. And then once they hit their main rank, obviously, like, once their face rank has caught up with their MMR, then they're going to slow down. Their LP gains are going to normalize at about 20 minus 20, and then they'd have to actually show that they are able to outperform D4 when given fair MMR and fair LP gains in D4. They'd have to actually outperform that in order to continue to climb, for example. And that's just an example of a D4 player. For a Masters player, they might be, accelerated with really good MMR most of their climb until they get to Masters, and then they would, have to deal with even LP gains and losses. So the difficulty and the issue here is that by getting rid of Smurfs Queue and you've compensated a little bit by giving people higher placement, and you've compensated a little bit by by allowing normal game MMR to affect the higher placement, and then by giving them higher LP gains, but it's mitigating it. It's not taking it away. And so the reality is that even with higher LP gains and higher placement, it may still take somebody 60 or 100 games to get back to their main rank or whatever. And if it takes them 60 or 100 games to get back to their main rank, then we have an issue, because now they're playing 60 or 100 games in silver and gold and plat that they wouldn't have been playing if Smurfs Queue existed, because they would have been playing 50 out of those 60 in Smurf Queue. Except for a couple initially or something like that. And maybe a couple of times they do bad and they drop out of Smurfs Queue, and then they do well and get back into it or whatever. Another thing here. Somebody said, when I had said that I thought that it took about 200 games to get to Diamond on a fresh account, and about 300 games to get to Masters on a fresh account, even for me as a Masters player, they said that didn't sound right. And I wonder if the reason why they said that didn't sound right, that like it took like way less games, is because I haven't gotten an account or taken an account that I leveled up and played it like unranked to Masters or something like that over the last year and a half. And so maybe if I were to go take an account, play normal games on the account to level 30, I might get placed into plat when I'm expecting the old system where you would get placed into like silver 3 even if you did well in your placements. And so let me know what you guys think. Has anybody placed a new account, a fresh account? You have played the normal games, but it used to be that you wouldn't place higher than silver 1 on a fresh account. So I'm assuming that that's no longer the case. So let me know if you've played on a fresh account, with normal game MMR, without normal game MMR, whatever. Have you been able to place into gold, into plat on a fresh account, maybe even higher on a fresh account? And when you gain LP, are you gaining, because what I would expect is maybe you gain like 40 LP for your first, I'm not talking about in your placements, I'm talking about after your placements. During your placements, we all know, it says you go up or down about 80 LP or whatever per game. Or not down, you don't go down during your placements either, which is another thing that they've done. But, people are saying, or what I understand is that you gain like 40 LP for your first couple of games, and then it should taper off, and you should go down, like more like plus 30, and then eventually it'll equalize, and you'll get about plus 20 as your MMR approaches as your face rank catches up to your MMR. Or is it the case that you're gaining more than 40 LP? Are people gaining 50 or 60 LP out of their placements on new Smurf accounts? Essentially, what Riot needs to do is they need to bring back Smurf Queue, or they need to overtune the LP gains. The problem is that if they overtune the LP gains, so imagine if your account was D4 MMR and your account was currently in Plat 4, imagine if you just gained like plus 400 LP for a win. Now, obviously, this is a really exaggerated example, but imagine it just stuck you in D4. Essentially, imagine if your face rank almost was just gone, right? Essentially, your face rank is just a representation of your MMR, and your face rank would just always instantly catch up to your MMR. Would that be a good thing? Or do you think it would cause slingshotting, where people would be able to propel themselves a little bit past the rank that they should actually be at? Would it be a good thing or a bad thing? The other thing I want to say, because I think it could confuse some people, is when I say, because sometimes just the way that I phrase it, when I say, for example, that a Masters player is playing on a new account, and that their MMR is like Diamond or Masters or something like that, and so they're going to get like accelerated, I don't mean that the system like can tell that they're Masters or Diamond and it's like choosing to accelerate them, or it like thinks that they're a good player and so it like chooses to accelerate certain players. It's that they started out with the same MMR as everybody else, which is no normal game MMR, like standard ranked MMR, I guess, at 1200. If it's a normal game MMR account where they played the normal games, then they won a bunch of normal games against certain MMR players in order to prove that they were better than those players. And as a result of winning those games, they were able to get placed at a certain higher starting MMR. And then they continued to win once they were in ranked more than they lost, so that their MMR in ranked was higher than their face rank. So maybe they start ranked and their MMR is like that of a Platinum 4 player, but their face rank is that of a Gold 4 player. And then as they continue to win more and more games at Platinum 4 MMR, even though they have the Gold 4 face rank, their face rank is slowly going up by 30 LP at a time. And their MMR is also going up. But then they get to a point where, let's say they're a D4 player, and they stop losing as many games, or they stop winning as many games in D4 MMR. They start winning 50-50. And their rank keeps going up because they're still gaining more LP than they're losing, but their MMR is not going up any higher. And eventually their face rank kind of catches up to their MMR. But because they're not propelling their MMR any more forward by winning more ranked games, they don't climb any higher than their main rank. So it's not that the algorithm or that the matchmaking is actively selecting for certain players. It's that players are building their MMR up, including through normal games nowadays, on a new account, right? They're building their MMR up through normal games on a new account before their placements. And then as a result, they're placing higher. And if they're able to maintain that win rate at that rank, then they're going to continue to climb until they're no longer able to maintain a positive win rate, at which point their face rank will eventually catch up to their hidden rank, and then their LP gains will stabilize. So it's not that anybody's getting some sort of crazy favorable treatment or something in climbing on a new account. Riot doesn't know. It's just that they're winning as many games essentially in order to get to that rank as they would need to prove to the matchmaking system that they can hang at that rank. And obviously anybody can do that on any account, so there's no reason why someone who is stuck in gold or something couldn't also do the same thing. Hope that you guys found this helpful or enjoyed. Good luck in solo queue and have a wonderful day, and we will hope that Riot maybe brings back Smurfs Queue or adjusts the LP gains. Also, some people are saying, like, I think that low elo players are so confused by the face rank versus the hidden MMR that I do agree that it would just be better to do away with hidden MMR or face rank or whatever you want to call it. Do away with one of them and just let people see what rank they are. It could be like, so you could do it two different ways. It could be like League was in Season 1, where you just have an ELO number, and the ELO number could even be associated with a rank. Like if you're, at 2,000 or above, you're Masters. If you're at 1,500 and above, you're Gold or Plat or whatever you want to call it, right? You could have a way to associate those things with those things, but you just get to see your number so that it would be very clear to you how everything's working. I think that would create a lot of clarity for low elo players on how the rank system works and help to not confuse them so much. Alternatively, you could have a system maybe a little bit more like CSGO, where it shows you your face rank, but your face rank will automatically and very quickly update up or down after a single game. So for example, like we talked about, if you're a player with Platinum MMR, and you're on a new account, rather than placing into Gold and then getting good LP gains over the next 10 or 20 games to get to Plat, you could just put that person in Plat. Or if you were a player who was in D4, but your MMR was now Platinum 2, they would just demote you down to Platinum 2 instantly. Now, maybe people wouldn't like that because it's, it's too quick. You don't get a chance to kind of hold or defend your rank. It's too streaky. One instance of somebody AFKing or one bad game can suddenly shoot somebody down in a way that maybe wouldn't be so nice. But it would also be very transparent. So maybe in this case, more transparency would be a good thing.